The smell of death is something you never really forget. It's not just the scent of lilies at a funeral or the sterile odor of a hospital wing. It's the smell of a life being packed away into cardboard boxes. My father, Thomas Vance, was a man of silence. He was a master mechanic, an engineer who could listen to the heartbeat of a V8 engine and tell you exactly which valve was misfiring, but when it came to his children, he was a ghost. I sat in the mahogany-paneled office of his attorney, Mr. Sterling. The air was thick with the kind of tension you could cut with a knife. To my right sat Marcus. Marcus was the success story. He wore a Rolex that cost more than my house and a tailored suit that screamed, "I own the room." He didn't look sad. He looked bored. To my left was Elena, my sister. She was draped in black silk, her eyes hidden behind oversized designer sunglasses, probably already calculating the resale value of the family estate. And then there was me, Sebastian, the son who stayed in the garage, the one who had grease under his fingernails, and a bank account that was currently sitting at a depressing $300. I didn't want his money. I just wanted to know why he hadn't called me in 5 years. Sterling cleared his throat, sliding his spectacles down his nose. "We shall begin with the distribution of the primary estate," he whispered. "To Marcus Vance, I leave the Vance engineering firm, the downtown penthouse, and all liquid real estate holdings." Marcus let out a small, sharp exhale of victory. He didn't just get the money, he got the throne. "To Elena Vance," Sterling continued, "I leave the international stock portfolio, the Hamptons beach house, and the family's art collection." Elena nodded, her red-painted lips curling into a tiny, satisfied smirk. She was set for 10 lifetimes. The room went quiet. Sterling looked at me, and for a second, I saw pity in his eyes. That's when I knew I was about to get gutted. "And to my youngest son, Sebastian, I leave the 1967 Chevrolet Impala, currently stored in the north barn of the old farmstead, along with a single toolbox and the title to the vehicle." The silence was broken by Marcus's barking laugh. It was a cruel, jagged sound. "A rust bucket?" Dad gave the grease monkey a pile of scrap metal. He leaned over, looking me dead in the eye. "That car hasn't run since the Bush administration. Seb, it's a literal cage for rats. I guess Dad finally realized what you're worth." Elena didn't even laugh. She just stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Well, at least you have something to sleep in when your landlord kicks you out. Sebastian, good luck with the restoration. Try not to get tetanus." They walked out together, the smell of expensive cologne lingering in the air like a mockery. I stood there, holding a rusted key with a faded leather tag. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, but I wasn't surprised. I was the disappointment, the one who didn't want to build skyscrapers. I just wanted to build machines. I drove to the old farmstead that evening. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the overgrown fields. The north barn was a skeleton of rotting wood and rusted tin. It groaned in the wind as I pushed the heavy doors open. The air inside was thick with decades of dust and the heavy, sweet scent of dry hay. And there it was! Under a tarp that had turned a sickly shade of gray sat the Impala. I pulled the tarp back and a cloud of dust choked me. It was a disaster. The midnight blue paint was oxidized and peeling. The tires were flat, fused to the dirt floor. The chrome bumpers were pitted with rust. It looked like a corpse. I kicked the front tire, and a piece of the quarter panel literally flaked off and hit the ground. "Thanks, Dad," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Nice way to say goodbye." I climbed into the driver's seat. The springs groaned, and the smell of old leather and stale oil filled my lungs. It was the smell of my childhood. I remembered sitting in this seat when I was 6, holding a plastic steering wheel while Dad worked under the chassis. He used to tell me, "Seb, most people only look at the paint job, but the soul of a machine is in the parts you can't see." I looked at the dashboard. It was caked in grime, but then I noticed something. The odometer. It read exactly 0. That was impossible. Dad had driven this car for years. Unless the engine had been replaced. I reached for the glove box, hoping to find the original manual. It was stuck. I yanked it hard, the plastic snapped, and the door swung open. Inside, there was no manual. There was only a small, heavy wooden box and a handwritten note. The note said, "They think I gave you nothing. They think you are the weak one. Prove them wrong, Sebastian. Don't sell the car. Don't open the trunk until the engine breathes again. Look deeper." Suddenly, I heard the crunch of gravel outside. I froze. A pair of headlights cut through the gaps in the barn walls. It was Marcus's SUV. He stepped out, his shadow stretching across the barn floor like a giant. "Changed my mind. Seb?" Marcus shouted, his voice echoing off the rafters. "I'm selling this land to a developer tonight. The bulldozers are coming at 6 a.m. You have 12 hours to get this trash off my property, or I'm watching them crush it into a cube. Decide fast." He didn't wait for an answer. He just drove away, leaving me in the dark with a dead car and a note that made no sense. But as I looked down at the wooden box in my lap, I felt a strange vibration. It wasn't the wind. It was coming from the floorboards of the car. 12 hours. I had 12 hours to save a piece of junk, or lose the only secret my father ever shared with me. 12 hours. The countdown felt like a ticking time bomb in my skull. Marcus wasn't just being a jerk. He was trying to erase me. By 6 a.m., this barn and everything in it would be nothing but splintered wood and flattened steel. I stood in the center of that rotting barn, my breath hitching in the cold air. I looked at the 1967 Impala. It was a dead weight, 2 tons of oxidized metal fused to the earth. Most people would have called a scrapyard and taken the $50 for the metal, but that note in my pocket was burning a hole in my leg. Look deeper. I didn't have a trailer. I didn't have a tow truck. All I had was my old 1998 Chevy pickup and a set of heavy-duty winch cables. I spent the next 4 hours in a fever dream of grease and sweat. I had to dig the dirt out from under the flat tires just to get a jack underneath. Every time I lifted the car an inch, the rotting floorboards of the barn groaned, threatening to collapse and bury us both. By 3 a.m., I had the Impala hooked to the back of my truck. The tires weren't holding air, so I was literally dragging a dead beast across the gravel. The sound was deafening, the screech of metal on stone echoing through the empty valley. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw the silhouette of Marcus's SUV on the hill. He was still there, a silent vulture waiting for me to fail. I flipped him the bird and floored the gas. I reached my small, cramped garage on the outskirts of town just as the first gray light of dawn hit the sky. My muscles were screaming, and my eyes felt like they were full of sand. I unhooked the car and pushed it inside, slamming the corrugated metal door shut. I was safe for now. I sat on a milk crate staring at the car. The wooden box Dad left in the glove box was sitting on my workbench. I picked it up. It was heavy, made of solid oak, with no visible hinges or keyhole, just a smooth, polished surface with a small circular indentation on the top. I tried to pry it open with a screwdriver. Nothing. I tried a hammer. Not even a scratch. Then I looked at the circular indentation again. It was the exact size of the family crest ring Dad used to wear, the one he'd given me on my 18th birthday, telling me it was the key to the family's grit. I pulled the ring off my finger, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pressed the crest into the indentation. Click. The box didn't just open, it disassembled itself. The sides slid away to reveal a heavy, silver-plated cylinder and a set of high-density microfilms. This wasn't mechanic stuff. This looked like something out of a high-security lab. I grabbed a magnifying glass and held the film up to the light. My hands started to shake. These weren't just car blueprints. They were schematics for a hydrogen ion fusion core. A power source small enough to fit in a car engine but powerful, enough to run a city block. If this worked, it would make gasoline obsolete overnight. It would destroy the oil industry. The note said, "Don't open the trunk until the engine breathes again." I realized then that the worthless car wasn't just a vehicle. It was a camouflage. Dad hadn't just been a mechanic. He'd been an inventor who had discovered the holy grail of energy, and he knew that if the wrong people found out, he'd be dead. Marcus and Elena thought they got the fortune, but they only got the paper. I was holding the fire. I grabbed my wrench and headed for the Impala's hood. I had to see the engine. I popped the latches and threw the heavy steel lid back. I expected to see a rusted V8 block covered in rat nests. Instead, I saw a masterpiece. The engine was encased in a vacuum-sealed, brushed chrome housing. There were no spark plug wires, no carburetor, no traditional cooling system, just a series of glowing blue glass tubes and a central core that looked like it belonged on a spacecraft, but it was cold, dead. I looked at the schematics. To jumpstart the core, I needed a specific chemical catalyst, something Dad had hidden elsewhere in the car. I started tearing the interior apart. I ripped out the back seats, searched under the dashboard, and checked the door panels. That's when I found it. Taped to the underside of the gas tank was a small, lead-lined vial containing a shimmering, iridescent liquid. Suddenly, my garage door exploded inward. The metal screeched as a blacked-out van rammed through the entrance. 3 men in tactical gear, carrying silenced submachine guns, jumped out. They didn't look like cops. They looked like professional cleaners. One of them stepped forward, pointing his weapon directly at my chest. "The drive, Sebastian. Give us the drive in the car, and you might live to see breakfast." I looked at the vial in my hand, then at the chrome engine. I only had one move. I lunged for the engine, uncapping the vial. "Stay back!" I roared, "or I'll turn this whole block into a crater." The garage was silent, except for the ticking of the cooling engine and the heavy breathing of the men in black. The lead-lined vial felt like a piece of the sun in my hand. One of the men took a step forward, his boots crunching on the broken glass of my garage door. "Don't be a hero, Sebastian," he said, his voice muffled by a tactical mask. "That liquid isn't a toy. It's a catalyst. If you drop it, we all die. If you give it to us, you walk away with enough money to buy 10 of these garages." Looked at the chrome engine, then back at them. "My father didn't die for a paycheck. He died to keep this out of hands like yours." I didn't wait for him to respond. I poured the iridescent liquid into the central intake of the engine. For a second, nothing happened. Then a low hum began to vibrate through the floorboards. It wasn't the sound of a normal car. It was a rhythmic, pulsing throb that felt like a heartbeat. The blue glass tubes on the engine block started to glow, turning from a soft azure to a blinding electric violet. "He's starting it." "Kill him!" the leader screamed. A silenced shot whistled past my ear, shattering the windshield of my truck. I dove behind the Impala's reinforced fender. The engine was screaming now, a high-pitched whine that shattered every light bulb in the garage. Darkness swallowed us, lit only by the pulsing violet glow of the car. I reached into the cabin and slammed my hand onto the ignition button. The engine didn't roar, it exhaled. A wave of pure cold energy blasted out from the exhaust, knocking the gunmen off their feet. The air in the garage suddenly tasted like ozone, sharp and metallic. I jumped into the driver's seat. The dashboard, which had been dead for 30 years, flickered to life. It wasn't a standard speedometer. It was a holographic display showing energy levels, heat signatures, and a GPS map with a single red dot flashing 50 miles north. "Trunk access granted," a synthetic voice whispered from the speakers. I heard the heavy thud of the trunk latch releasing. I didn't have time to look. I slammed the car into gear. The Impala didn't just move, it launched. There was no wheel spin, no smoke, just a silent, brutal force that sent the car flying through the remains of the garage door, pinning one of the gunmen against the wall as I tore into the night. The black van was right on my tail, their headlights cutting through the dark like twin daggers. I floored it. The holographic display showed my speed climbing, 80, 120, 60 miles per hour. The car was rock solid. It felt like it was glued to the asphalt. I looked at the rearview mirror and saw a second van joining the chase. These guys weren't stopping. They were corporate assassins, the kind of people who disappear billionaires. And then a familiar voice came over the car's radio system. "Sebastian, can you hear me?" It was Marcus, but he didn't sound arrogant anymore. He sounded terrified. "Seb, listen to me. They're coming for you. They killed Dad because he wouldn't sign over the patents. I thought if I gave them the land, they'd leave us alone. I was wrong. They're going to kill us both to bury the secret. Get to the coordinates on your screen. It's the only place they can't follow." "You sold us out, Marcus," I roared, gripping the steering wheel. "I tried to protect the family business, Seb. I didn't know they were monsters." "Just drive!" "If that car hits 200, the electromagnetic shield activates. It's your only chance." I looked at the display. 185 midpoint. The vans were gaining. I pressed the pedal into the floorboards. The violet glow around the car intensified, forming a shimmering bubble of light. I took one last look at the road before the world turned into a blur of pure energy. I wasn't just driving a car anymore. I was driving a revolution. And the people who killed my father were about to find out exactly how much that revolution was worth. The needle hit 200. The world outside the windshield didn't just blur, it warped. The shimmering violet bubble around the Impala solidified, and suddenly the roar of the wind vanished. It was silent. Dead silent. I looked in the mirror and the black vans were gone. It wasn't that I had outrun them. It was that their electronics had fried the moment they entered my wake. I followed the red dot on the holographic map. It led me deep into the Blackwood Forest, down a service road that didn't appear on any standard GPS. The trees were dense, their branches clawing at the car's reinforced glass like skeletal fingers. Finally, the road ended at a massive, rusted steel gate embedded into the side of a mountain. The gate didn't have a keypad, it had a scanner. I drove the Impala right up to it. A beam of blue light swept over the car's hood, identifying the engine's unique thermal signature. With a heavy tectonic groan, the mountain opened up. I drove inside a vast subterranean hangar. It was filled with old computer terminals, prototype engines, and floor-to-ceiling chalkboards covered in my father's messy, genius handwriting. I killed the engine. The violet glow faded, leaving me in the dim hum of emergency generators. I remembered the trunk. I walked to the back of the car. My heart was a drum in my chest. I lifted the heavy lid. I expected bags of cash or maybe the $10 million in bearer bonds, but there was only a single vintage television monitor and a small black box. I pressed a button on the side. The screen flickered to life. Gray static cleared to reveal my father. He looked tired. His hair was thinner than I remembered, and he was sitting in the very chair I was looking at right now. "Sebastian!" he began, his voice gravelly but firm. "If you're seeing this, it means you chose the car over the scrapyard. It means you're the son I hoped you were. Marcus and Elena, they chose the shadows. They chose the money that's already been spent. But you, Seb, you chose the future." He leaned closer to the camera. "That engine is worth $10 million to the men chasing you. They want to buy it just to destroy it. They want the world to stay addicted to their oil. But the blueprints in that black box, they're worth more than money. They're the key to a world where no one has to fight over a gallon of gas ever again." Dad paused, a sad smile touching his lips. "They think they killed me for a secret. But I didn't die for a secret, Seb. I died for a legacy. The men who are coming for you work for a group called the Meridian. They have senators, judges, and police chiefs on their payroll. You can't run from them, and you can't outdrive them forever." Suddenly, the video feed distorted. Dad looked over his shoulder, a look of grim realization on his face. "They found me, Seb. Listen to me carefully. The car isn't just a vehicle, it's a key. The metal in the floorboards, that titanium alloy, it's the only thing that can stabilize the core at full power. If they get the car, they get the world. Don't let them..." The video cut to black. I stood in the silence of the bunker, clutching the black box. My father wasn't just a mechanic. He was a revolutionary, and he had handed me the trigger. A red light began to flash on the hangar wall. The external sensors were picking up a massive convoy approaching the mountain. Not just vans this time. Armored vehicles, heavy hardware. "Meridian," I whispered. I looked at the Impala. It wasn't a worthless car anymore. It was a weapon of mass disruption. I climbed back into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel. I wasn't going to hide in a hole. If they wanted the future, they were going to have to catch it first. I fired up the engine. The violet light didn't just glow this time, it screamed. The mountain groaned. Outside, the rhythmic thud of helicopter rotors began to vibrate through the granite walls. The Meridian wasn't just coming for a car. They were coming for a war. I looked at the black box on the passenger seat, then at the holographic display. "Multiple hostiles detected," the car's synthetic voice warned. "Armored perimeter established." I didn't have a choice. I couldn't stay in this bunker and wait for them to smoke me out. I slammed the shifter into reverse, spun the wheel, and lined the Impala up with the hangar's exit tunnel. "Hey, Dad." I whispered, looking at the empty passenger seat. Hope you made this thing bulletproof. I floored it. The violet core surged, and the car didn't just accelerate, it jumped. I hit the heavy steel hangar doors at 80 miles per hour. The electromagnetic pulse from the car's shield fried the door's locking mechanism a split second before impact, and I burst through the steel like it was wet cardboard. I emerged into a nightmare. The forest was crawling with black SUVs and two massive Bearcat armored vehicles. High above, a sleek, silent drone hummed, painting a red laser dot on my hood. Target locked, the drone's operator must have said. A missile streaked down from the sky. I pulled the steering wheel hard to the left. The Impala pivoted with impossible physics, the tires gripping the dirt like claws. The missile hit the ground where I had been a second ago, sending a wall of fire and debris into the air. Shield integrity at 80%, the car reported. I wasn't just running. I was calculating. I noticed that every time I got close to one of their vehicles, their engines sputtered, and their dashboard lights went haywire. The car was a walking blackout. I headed for the main highway. I needed speed and I needed space. One of the armored Bearcats tried to ram me from the side, its massive steel ramming prow aimed at my driver's side door. I didn't swerve. I hit a button on the dash labeled kinetic discharge. The violet bubble around the car turned a fierce, angry red. When the 3-ton armored truck hit me, it didn't crush the Impala. It bounced off, hard, as if it had hit a brick wall made of pure energy. The truck flipped twice, skidding into the trees in a shower of sparks. I hit the highway, the needle climbing past 150, but then my screen turned to static. A face appeared, not my father's, but a man in a pristine white suit, sitting in a high-backed leather chair. "Sebastian," the man said, his voice smooth and terrifyingly calm. "I am Director Vance. No relation, I assure you. Although your father did work for me once. You are currently driving $10 billion of research that belongs to the Meridian Group. You've had your fun. Now stop the car, or we will authorize the use of the orbital strike." "You killed him," I growled, my knuckles white on the wheel. "You killed a man for a car engine. I killed a man for the status quo." "Sebastian, the world isn't ready for free energy. It would collapse the economy. We are the ones keeping the peace. You're the ones keeping the profits," I yelled. I saw it then, 2 miles ahead, a roadblock, 6 trucks, a line of spikes, and 30 men with heavy rifles, and behind them a bridge. "Sebastian, stop the car," the director said. I looked at the black box. If I stopped, the world stayed in the dark. If I kept going, I might not make it across that bridge. I reached down and flipped a switch I hadn't noticed before. It was hidden under the steering column, covered by a small glass case. It said overdrive total extraction. "Hey, Dad always said, look deeper," I whispered. I smashed the glass and flipped the switch. The Impala's engine didn't just hum now. It roared with a sound that wasn't mechanical. It sounded like a star being born. The violet light expanded, engulfing the entire car until I was driving a comet of pure energy toward the roadblock. "He's not stopping," someone screamed over the radio. I closed my eyes and held on. The world turned white. When I hit that roadblock, there was no sound of metal crushing metal. There was just a massive electromagnetic boom that sent the 6 Meridian trucks flying into the air like they were made of tin foil. I felt the Impala lift off the ground, gliding on a cushion of pure energy, before slamming back onto the asphalt of the bridge. The director's face on my screen flickered and dissolved into static. I was through, but as I looked in the rearview mirror, the bridge behind me was glowing with a strange, ionized blue light. I had fried every piece of technology within a half-mile radius. "System overheat," the car's voice warned, sounding strained, core stability at 40%. Immediate cooling required. The violet glow was fading, replaced by a dangerous pulsing orange. Smoke began to curl from the edges of the hood. I couldn't stay on the main highway. I needed a place to hide, a place to cool the core before it turned into a miniature sun. I steered the car off a dirt exit, heading toward the one place I hadn't been since I was a child. My grandfather's abandoned shipyard on the coast. It was a graveyard of rusted hulls and rotting piers. As I pulled into the shadows of a massive, half-sunken freighter, I finally killed the engine. The silence was deafening. I sat there, my hands shaking so hard I couldn't unclip my seatbelt. I had just survived a military-grade ambush in a car I'd inherited from a man I thought didn't love me. "Okay, Dad," I whispered, leaning my head against the steering wheel. "What now?" I remembered the black box. I opened it again, but this time I noticed a second compartment hidden in the lid. Inside was a small brass key, old-fashioned, the kind used for a safe deposit box, and a photograph. It was a picture of my father, Marcus, Elena, and another man. They were standing in front of this very shipyard. The other man had his arm around my father's shoulder. He looked exactly like the director from the Meridian Group, but younger and smiling. On the back of the photo, Dad had written, "Trust no one with the name Vance, not even the ones you share blood with." Suddenly, the car's proximity sensors chimed. A single vehicle was approaching. Not a van, not an armored truck. It was a sleek silver convertible. It pulled up 10 feet away and the driver stepped out. It was Elena. She wasn't wearing her designer sunglasses now. Her eyes were red and she looked terrified. She didn't have a weapon. She was holding a tablet. "Seb, don't shoot!" she screamed, her voice cracking. I climbed out of the Impala, my wrench in my hand. "What are you doing here, Elena? Did the director send you to finish the job?" "The director is our uncle, Sebastian," she cried out. "Dad's brother. The man we were told died before we were born. He's been hunting Dad for 30 years. I froze. "Our uncle? Then why is Marcus working with him? Marcus doesn't know. Elena ran toward me, showing me the tablet. I hacked into Marcus's encrypted files. He thinks he's negotiating a business merger. He doesn't realize he's helping a murderer. Seb, the $10 million, it was never about the money. It was a bounty. The Meridian group put a price on Dad's head the day he stole that engine, prototype from their lab. I looked at the Impala, then back at the photo in my hand. The truth was worse than the lies. Our father wasn't just an inventor. He was a thief who had stolen his own life back from a corporate monster. They're tracking my car, Seb, Elena said, looking over her shoulder at the dark road. Marcus is on his way here right now with the Meridian extraction team. He thinks he's saving the family company. He has no idea he's bringing our father's killers right to our door. I looked at the cooling engine. The orange glow was gone, but the car was still ticking. I had the key. I had the blueprints. And now I had the truth. We have to move, I said, grabbing Elena's arm. But we're not running anymore. We're going to give Marcus a wake-up call he'll never forget. I hopped back into the driver's seat. Elena, get in. It's time to see what this worthless car can really do when it's not just trying to survive. The engine sparked to life, but this time the glow was different. It wasn't violet or orange. It was a steady, brilliant white. Phase 2 initiated, the car whispered. The white glow from the dashboard illuminated Elena's face. She looked like she had seen a ghost, and in a way, she had. Our entire life was built on the lies of a man who called himself our uncle. Seb, she whispered, staring at the holographic display. This car, it's not just an engine, it's a data terminal. Dad didn't just hide the technology here. He hid the evidence of every crime the Meridian group ever committed. Before I could answer, a roar of engines shattered the silence of the shipyard. 3 black SUVs skidded to a halt, blocking the only exit. From the middle vehicle, Marcus stepped out. He looked disheveled, his expensive suit rumpled, but his eyes were full of a desperate kind of greed. Sebastian, Elena, Marcus shouted, his voice trembling. Step away from the car. Now I've made a deal. If we hand over the prototype, the Meridian group will fold Vance Engineering into their global network. We'll be billionaires, Seb. All of us. I stepped out of the Impala, keeping the door open. Marcus, look at the men behind you. They aren't business partners. They're the people who hunted Dad for 30 years. They're the people who killed him. Lies, Marcus screamed, but he glanced back at the men in tactical gear who were now unholstering their weapons. Director Vance's family. He told me Dad was mentally ill, that he stole company property. Suddenly a voice boomed from the SUV's loudspeaker. It was the director. Enough of this family drama. Marcus, you've served your purpose. You brought us to the car. Now step aside. Marcus froze. What? No, we had a deal. My siblings come with me. The director stepped out of the shadows, a silenced pistol in his hand. There is no deal for failures, Marcus. Your father was a genius. You are just a salesman who didn't know what he was selling. The director raised his weapon, aiming it straight at Marcus's chest. No! I lunged for the dash and hit the acoustic pulse button, a concentrated wave of sound, so powerful it was visible as a ripple in the air blasted out from the Impala's front grille. The director and his men were thrown backward, their eardrums likely ruptured by the sheer force. Marcus fell to the ground, clutching his ears. Get in, both of you! Now! I roared. Elena scrambled into the passenger seat. Marcus, looking broken and confused, dived into the back. I slammed the car into gear. The white light of the core was blinding now. I didn't drive around the SUVs. I drove through them. The Impala's kinetic shield was at full power, turning the 2-ton car into a literal wrecking ball. We smashed through the shipyard gates and hit the open road, but we weren't alone. A heavy-duty attack helicopter appeared in the sky, its spotlight pinning us to the asphalt like a bug under a microscope. Warning, the car's voice said. Missile lock detected. Shield energy at 30%. The core is reaching critical mass. Seb, if the core hits critical, we'll vaporize everything in a 5-mile radius, Elena shouted over the roar of the engine. I looked at the brass key Dad had left in the box. I looked at the ignition. There was one more slot. One I hadn't seen before, hidden behind the steering wheel column. It was labeled Ground Zero. He didn't leave me a car to get rich, I realized, the wind howling through the broken windows. He left me a car to end this. What are you doing? Marcus gasped from the back seat, finally realizing the scale of the war he had. Started, done, I'm going to the Meridian headquarters, I said, my voice as cold as the titanium floorboards. If they want this engine so badly, I'm gonna give it to them. All of it. I shoved the brass key into the hidden slot and turned it. The Impala didn't just speed up. It began to hum a frequency that made the very air around us vibrate. The GPS updated to a location in the heart of the city, a skyscraper that owned the skyline. The hunt was over. The siege was beginning. The city skyline loomed ahead like a fortress of glass and steel. At the center sat the Meridian Tower, a 60-story monument to corporate greed. The helicopter was still on our tail, but it couldn't get a clean shot. Every time it tried to lock its missiles, the Impala's white core emitted a burst of interference that scrambled its sensors. Seb, look at the energy levels, Elena screamed, pointing at the holographic display. The numbers were climbing into the red. The core isn't just powering the car anymore. It's absorbing ambient electricity from the city grid. You're turning this car into a rolling EMP. Marcus was shaking in the back seat, staring at the floorboards. Dad was insane, he whispered. He didn't build a car. He built a weapon that could reset the world. He built a choice, Marcus, I shot back, swerving through midnight traffic. And tonight, we're making it. As we approached the tower, the streetlights began to explode in our wake. Transformers on the poles showered the road in blue sparks. The Meridian Tower went into lockdown. Massive steel shutters slid over the lobby windows, and a private army of security guards lined the entrance, weapons drawn. Warning. the car whispered. Structural integrity failing. Core meltdown in 3 minutes. I looked at the gate. It was a reinforced steel barrier designed to stop a tank. I didn't slow down. I reached for the black box and pulled out the encrypted hard drive Dad had hidden. Elena, take this. I handed it to her. The moment we hit the lobby, this car is going to emit a massive electromagnetic pulse. It will fry every server in that building, but it will also open their digital vaults for 10 seconds. You have to upload the blueprints and the evidence to every news station on the planet. Can you do it? Elena's eyes widened, but she grabbed the drive. 10 seconds? Seb, that's impossible. The car will give you the window. Just don't miss. I looked at Marcus in the rearview mirror. And you, when the world starts asking questions, you tell them the truth about the Vance name. No more deals. No more lies. Marcus looked at the towering building, then at me. For the first time in my life, I saw respect in his eyes. He nodded slowly. I'll handle the fallout. Brace yourselves. I roared. I hit the ground zero trigger. The Impala didn't just accelerate. It became a streak of white light. We hit the steel gates at 100 miles per hour. There was no impact, just a blinding flash of energy as the car's shield disintegrated the barrier on a molecular level. We crashed through the lobby, skidding across the polished marble floor, and came to a halt right in front of the main elevator bank. The car's engine gave one final tectonic throb, and then silence. A massive wave of white energy expanded outward from the Impala. Every light in the tower went out. Every computer screen went black. Every electronic lock clicked open. Now! I yelled. Elena slammed the hard drive into her tablet, which was protected by a lead-lined case Dad had built into the glove box. Uploading. 10%, 40%, 80%. Suddenly, the elevator doors in front of us hissed open. The director stepped out, but he wasn't alone. He was wearing a prototype exoskeleton, a suit of armor powered by the very technology my father had invented. You think a car can stop an empire, Sebastian? The director hissed, his metallic fist glowing with a familiar violet light. I didn't just want the engine. I wanted the man who could improve it. Since your father is dead, you'll have to do. He lunged forward, his metal hand punching through the Impala's reinforced hood like it was paper. The director's metallic fist was inches from my face, pinned into the crumpled hood of the Impala. The violet glow from his exoskeleton was blinding, reflecting off the shattered marble of the lobby. He was a monster made of my father's stolen dreams. Your father was a dreamer. Sebastian, the director growled, his voice amplified by the suit's speakers. But dreams don't power the world, control does. And I have spent 30 years perfecting the control. He was too weak to handle. He ripped his hand out of the car and backhanded the side of the vehicle. 2 tons of steel slid 10 feet across the floor like a toy. Marcus and Elena were thrown against the doors, dazed. I scrambled out of the driver's seat, my hand catching on the heavy wrench I'd kept in my belt. Control? I spat, wiping blood from my lip. You killed your own brother because you couldn't understand that energy belongs to everyone. You're not a visionary. You're just a thief with a bigger budget. The director laughed, a cold mechanical sound. He raised his arm, and a pulse of violet energy began to build in his palm. The world is a market, Sebastian, and I am the CEO. Die with your junk, he fired. I dove behind a massive marble pillar as a bolt of energy turned the air into fire. The pillar disintegrated into dust. I looked at the Impala. The white core was flickering, dying, but then I saw the display. Upload 99% complete, the car's voice whispered through the broken speakers. Elena, did it go through? I yelled. Elena looked at her tablet, her eyes wide. Every news station, every government server, every social media platform, the blueprints, the murder files, the Meridian bank accounts, they're all public, Seb. The secret is out. The director froze. He looked at the screens in the lobby, which were now flickering back to life, showing my father's face and the schematics of the hydrogen core. His violet suit began to spark and hiss. No, he roared. I will burn this city to the ground before I let you take this from me. He turned his weapon toward Elena. I didn't think. I lunged toward the back of the Impala. I remembered the last line of Dad's note. Look deeper. I didn't look under the car. I looked at the wrench in my hand. It wasn't a standard tool. It was made of the same titanium alloy as the floorboards. I realized it wasn't a tool, it was a bypass key. I jammed the wrench into the exposed core sitting in the open hood. Final sequence, absolute zero, I commanded. The Impala didn't explode. It did the opposite. It began to suck the light and heat out of the room. A massive vacuum of energy formed around the car, pulling the violet power straight out of the director's exoskeleton. He screamed as his suit short-circuited, the metal plates locking up and crushing him under their own weight. The core, it's a black hole for energy, Marcus yelled, grabbing onto a bolted-down desk. The director fell to his knees, his suit dead, his power gone. Outside, the sirens of the entire city were wailing. The Meridian Tower was no longer a fortress. It was a cage. I stood over the man who had ruined my family, the titanium wrench still humming in my hand. It was never about the $10 million. Uncle, it was about making sure you couldn't buy your way out of the truth. The white glow of the car faded one last time. The Impala was truly a worthless pile of scrap now. Every wire was fried, every part was broken. But as the police burst through the doors and the world began to wake up to a new era of energy, I realized Dad had left me exactly what I I needed. The dust finally settled over the ruins of the Meridian lobby. The director was being led away in handcuffs, his face pale and his legacy in ashes. The world outside was in chaos, but for the first time in my life, I felt a strange, quiet peace. Marcus, Elena, and I stood on the sidewalk as the sun began to rise over the city. We looked like we had been through a war, and we had. The Impala was being loaded onto a flatbed truck behind us. It was twisted, blackened, and completely dead. To the reporters and the police, it was just a piece of evidence. To us, it was the only thing that had kept our family together. So what happens now? Elena asked, clutching the tablet that had changed history. The blueprints are out there. Every scientist on Earth is downloading Dad's work. The oil companies are crashing, and the world is never going to be the same. Marcus looked at the flatbed truck. We rebuild, he said, his voice firm. We don't need the Meridian group. We have the Vance name, and this time, we're going to use it for something that actually matters. No more secrets, no more greed. I walked over to the back of the truck and placed my hand on the rusted trunk of the Impala. It was cold now, the violet glow gone forever. But as I turned to walk away, I noticed a small metal compartment had popped open near the rear bumper, a hidden stash that only revealed itself when the car's frame was warped by the heat. Inside was a single old-fashioned cassette tape and a small leather-bound bank book. I took them home to my garage, the same garage where this journey began. I popped the tape into an old player. The hiss of the recording filled the room, and then my father's voice came through, clearer than ever. "Sebastian," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "If you're listening to this, you've won. You didn't just save the car, you saved the world. But I didn't want you to just be a hero, Seb. I wanted you to be free." I opened the bank book. It wasn't $10 million. It was an account in my name, funded by 30 years of small, untraceable royalties from patents Dad had hidden under different names. It was enough to build the greatest engineering firm the world had ever seen. "The secret wasn't the engine, Seb," the tape continued. "The secret was you. I knew Marcus would seek power, and Elena would seek security, but I knew you would seek the truth. Use the money to build a legacy that doesn't need to be hidden in a barn." I turned off the tape and looked at the empty space where the Impala used to sit. The car was gone, but the engine, the real engine, was now inside of me. I grabbed my wrench and started to clear the debris from my workbench. I had work to do, new designs to draw, a new world to build. Dad left me a worthless old car, but in the end, he gave me the only thing that truly matters, a future. The vacation was over. My life was just beginning.